Hey, what's going on, Gio?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
man, my pleasure. And really sorry about the delay. I just wanted to get the new link out to everyone, our community. Um, this is the second time this has happened. Happened last week on Wednesday as well. I opened up a space that we'd promoted the link with and gotten everyone um, situated with, and then all of a sudden, bam! I open it, and that mic button, which turns red with a cross through it, which means the space is actually live. Just like stays uncrossed. Basically, can't do anything. I have to close the space and open a new one, and then push out the new link to everyone that had set reminders. So it takes a bit of time, and it sets us back a bit. But we're here, and I'm glad to have you on. Did you have anyone else that was going to join you, or the Duke Blockchain Lab account, was that going to come on too, or is it going to be you and me?
I think let's just do you and me, and then if the other president of Duke Blockchain Lab might end up in the audience at some point throughout this, and if he does, I'll shoot you a private message, and we can bring him up if you want.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, Whale Coin Talk community. My name is Noah. I'm here today with Gio of the Duke Blockchain Lab. And Gio, before we get started talking about what you guys are doing on campus, do you want to give us a quick background of yourself, what you're studying, what kind of work you've done in Web3, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to everyone about kind of my experience in blockchain and what I'm up to. So yeah, I'm at Duke University. I'm a junior studying computer science with a concentration in AI and machine learning. And then I have a minor. I'm getting a minor in finance as well, and taking a bunch of various blockchain graduate courses. So I came to Duke as a pre-med. In high school, I spent a lot of time in the medical field, doing different internships and such. And then at Duke, I was planning to do a neuroscience major, and one of the courses I had to take for that was CS 101, and I'd never coded before. And started coding and really fell in love with the art of building and engaging with technical systems. And so ever since that, I decided I wanted to focus on the tech field. The tech field obviously has a bunch of applications across all industries. So that was something that was super interesting to me. And my first kind of professional role, I started working with this company based in Los Angeles, where we were launching a bunch of different decentralized applications for clients. So we were leveraging smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain, spinning up full stack applications. And we ended up creating around $2 million of value between us and our partners. And we actually also raised $500,000 for St. Jude's for children with cancer. And we did that in Tandex and a bunch of other partners as well. So yeah, spent a lot of time kind of diving into the field, learning the routes of tech, and it was a really fun experience. And then after that, I decided to join a blockchain startup called Mural, which is where I currently work, doing software and blockchain engineering. And at Mural, we're building basically software as a service for brands that want to engage their communities with Web3. So if you're looking for a way to engage your community and have a good touch point with members of your community via NFT memberships and Gnosis multi-sig treasuries, then go ahead and check out Mural in my bio. But yeah, that's kind of been my professional journey through blockchain. And at Duke, I run the Duke Blockchain Lab, along with Sujay, who's the other president, who may be joining later. And yeah, we'll get into all of that, kind of what we do at Duke. But that's been an amazing experience. I started as a technical executive there, and then been working really closely with previous presidents, and yeah, eventually transitioned into the president role and leading a bunch of stuff from our day-to-day or our week-to-week general body meetings, outreach, like events that we go to, and also leading the conference setup that we're doing in April. Yeah, so a lot to talk about. Excited to keep chatting.
Awesome. And do you ever look back and say, "Man, I missed neuroscience," or maybe I should have gone to med school," or is it just you changed that trajectory of your life and there's no looking back?
That's a great question. I think I've definitely changed that trajectory of my life, and I'm happy that I'm focusing on a field that's really exciting to me that has applications to all other fields. Like blockchain is very interconnected with pretty much every field that you can think of, even medicine in some senses. Although the actual products are still coming to market and everything. But yeah, no, the reason I love tech so much and I love engaging with decentralized applications is because it has such a great touch point with humans across the world, and it's really nice to be able to create value for people and be able to engage with leaders in kind of the tech industry.
So, Gio, without further ado, give us some insight into the Duke Blockchain Lab. I know you said you kind of started as a technical executive and worked your way up, and now you're involved in general body meetings, in outreach, and events, and leading the organization of the conference. So, I guess starting from the top, how big, or actually, let me phrase it this way: give us an overview of the Duke Blockchain Lab, and then we can individually jump into nuts and bolts, like how big it is, how people can become members, and then we can also talk about what you guys discuss at these general body meetings, how you do outreach, so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess kind of an overview of the Duke Blockchain Lab is that we're an undergraduate blockchain organization at Duke. I believe we're the only one on campus, and we have a good number of members. Probably we have around 150 to 200 people on our mailing list that have signed up to be members. And then we actively get between like 30 and 40 members per general body meeting that come up and participate. And yeah, I guess like throughout Duke Blockchain Lab, we have a number of different sectors. So we have a research arm that does research projects with industry leaders, and then we're building up an engineering arm. So we're teaching students how to engage in blockchain engineering, and one of the ways that we have built out that pipeline is by creating a Duke Blockchain Lab sponsored house course. So that's a Duke credited course. So it's registered with the university, and we have executives from the Duke Blockchain Lab go and teach that course. And in that course, we teach Solidity. So that's engineering, like smart contract engineering on EVM compatible chains. And we also teach JavaScript. So basically teaching students how to go out into the blockchain industry and become like a blockchain and software engineer. And then we also teach like the rungs of DeFi and NFTs and the metaverse, etc. Throughout that course. And then we also do like events. So like I was talking about before, we have a Duke conference, Duke Web3 conference that we're putting on with the graduate blockchain course in April. So April 22nd, 23rd. And yeah, that's going to be Web3 focused. We're bringing in a bunch of amazing people from industry. And then we also go and engage in other events. So we're going to ETH Denver, Starkware sessions in Tel Aviv. And I believe we're going to the Penn Blockchain event as well. And then also we're looking to get into like startup incubation and venture, and we're slowly building that arm out. And there's kind of an initiative around that I can't talk about too much, but yeah, definitely a bunch of exciting stuff happening in our like education space and our like pre-professional, I guess you could say, space.
Okay, so let's start with the mailing list. You said you have about 150 to 200 people on a mailing list. What are some, I guess, what's some of the content that people can expect in these newsletters?
Yeah, definitely. So we basically contact people when we have a general body meeting. So we'll send out a meeting to or a invite to everyone, and we'll let them know that hey, we're like having our general body meeting today, and we're bringing in speaker X from this part of the blockchain industry to talk about what they've done and what they've built. So we basically the 150 people is like people have signed up for a mailing list, but we have kind of a different routine for actually signing up for the club, which is via forms and applications. But people who want to get involved with blockchain and are interested in just coming by and seeing what it's all about can definitely come, and that's why we send those emails out.
So you said you get about 30 to 40 members per general body meeting. How big is the entire blockchain lab? And also, what are some things that you guys discuss at these general body meetings?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have between 70 and 80 people that actively come to meetings and are registered in the blockchain lab. And at these meetings, what we'll usually do is we'll bring in a speaker from industry and have them talk about their experience. So a couple of speakers that we've brought in from the past are we had a student who dropped out of Duke to pursue a startup called Harpy. So his name's Daniel. If you look up harpy.io, he's building a blockchain security application that was funded by Coinbase Ventures, Dragonfly, and a bunch of other amazing VCs. So we brought him in to talk to students in the club about his experience as a founder, and in the blockchain security space. And then we've also brought in people from venture. So we've had people from like Framework Ventures come and talk. And then we actually have a couple events coming up with some people from Starkware, which is a Zcash rollup solution for scaling Ethereum. And yeah, they're going to come in and teach Cairo, which is the native Starkware language. And then we're also talking to a bunch of other people from industry that are interested in talking to students at Duke. So yeah, basically we want to give students exposure to the industry, show them kind of some awesome projects and things happening. And yeah, basically that's kind of what we do in our GBMs. But like, we also have our research team sometimes present what they've worked on and like new research findings that they've had. So we've had one of those recently before the end of last semester, where our research team basically presented a way to determine the value of, or how to actually value tokens like say Ethereum using basically a revenue model where it's like, okay, Ethereum has fees, and if you calculate like those fees over time based off how much earnings Ethereum has, then you can kind of actually value a token. And it was a really interesting finding, and we're going to publish a paper on that soon. But yeah, that's kind of how our GBMs go. And if you have any questions there, I'm happy to answer anything.
No, not at all. That was a thorough breakdown. And I would be curious to know actually how you guys are helping educate the greater population at Duke, the greater student base at Duke. I mean, obviously, offering a class taught by students in the blockchain club is incredible. And I can see how that is a great intro into Web3. I'm assuming is it an elective credit, or is it, or would it like count as a CS major credit?
So it just counts as like a credit. It doesn't count towards, it's actually a half credit course. So at Duke, we have courses, and they're pretty much all one credit, except for like house courses, which are taught by students. Those are half credits. And there's some other courses that are also half credits that I can't remember. But yeah, it doesn't count towards a major, but you do need a certain number of credits to graduate. So it's helpful. And yeah, I believe it does also, like if you score well in the class, it does contribute to your GPA and everything.
Gio, outside the Duke Blockchain Lab, let's say you walk across campus and you approach 100 students. What is the general sentiment, especially in this cold bear market? What is the general sentiment towards Web3? Are people accepting of it? Do people like it? Do they think it's a scam? And I know that Web3 is pretty broad, but let's say if you asked 100 people about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the potential of Web3 and its applications.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think Duke is like a very, very diverse school in terms of thoughts and the way people perceive different sectors of industry. And I'd say like you definitely get a lot of students who may say, "Oh yeah, crypto and blockchain is kind of like a casino, and there's it's like high stakes gambling, and there's a lot going on that hopefully pans out well, but it seems to be somewhat of like a bunch of scammers." Um, and then you'll also get people who are like, yeah, actually this technology, like for like myself, I think like the technology is really interesting, and like dealing with distributed computing and interesting sectors of decentralization, I think is really interesting. And there's been some really novel improvements in this field that um, are fascinating. And so like I think you get a varied amount of responses. Some people who say like, yeah, this is an industry that's like a big bubble and is popping right now with the bear market, and it's going to all go to zero. And then you may get some people who are like, Yeah, this is actually really fascinating. And then maybe get some people who just don't even know, like they've heard like cryptocurrency and they're like, oh yeah, cool tokens and all, but they don't really know about like the underlying infrastructure. So yeah, I think you do a varied amount of responses, and we do our best to like educate the community, try to send out and get as much traction to our events and kind of what we talk about at Duke Blockchain Lab. And then we've brought in Fred Ursum from Paradigm to Duke, and had him speak to the students, and that had a massive turnout. Pretty much everyone was there in a really packed stadium or auditorium, and yeah, that was definitely insightful to a lot of people because Frederson was one of the co-founders of Coinbase and started his own venture capital firm, Paradigm Ventures, and yeah, people just are generally learning about the blockchain ecosystem, and it's a slow but progressive thing that we're doing here at Duke.
You mentioned that you're going to be hosting a Duke Web3 conference April 22nd and 23rd. Can you give us some more insight into that conference with respect to how many people are going to be coming, the attendees, the speakers, how you guys are going to be structuring the conference, where it's happening, the venue? I would love to, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're having a Duke Web3 conference, and we're putting that on with the Duke Blockchain Lab, which is our undergraduate community, and our graduate blockchain club. So we will have everybody from master's students, PhDs, to undergrads who are active in the industry attending. And basically, the Web3 conference is going to have kind of all sectors of blockchain incorporated in it. So we're touching like NFTs, and we'll have speakers from like the NFT industry, speakers from like Web3 decentralized application protocols. So people who are working at startups or co-founders of startups will be there sponsoring the event, speaking. And then we'll have speakers from infrastructure providers and cutting edge blockchain tech. So like we're talking to the people at Starkware who are building ZK infrastructure. We're talking to people at Risk Zero and also people at ZK Sync to come and talk about like zero knowledge proofs in blockchain. And we're also engaging people who are focused in the metaverse and also people who are really focused in DeFi and looking at how do we transition financial markets to adopt decentralized finance and build out our DeFi infrastructure. So yeah, we're trying to hit on every point of blockchain at this conference, and I'm more than happy to answer more questions about that or talk deeper. But yeah, we're engaging sponsors, so if anybody's interested in sponsoring the conference from industry, please reach out to me via DM. And yeah.
I wanted to circle back, and by the way, Gio, thank you for sharing all that info. If anyone has questions or wants to be a sponsor, definitely shoot Gio a DM. He's very responsive, easy to get in touch with on Twitter. I wanted to circle back to you said you're concentrating in AI machine learning. Can you draw a parallel between, or not a parallel, but can you kind of explain where or how that fits into Web3? I know there are a lot of different explanations, but I would love to see what your vision is as far as you graduating and you taking what you've learned and applying it to an industry that you're already working in and quite involved in.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's actually starting to like recently with the innovation of ZK rollups. And if you don't know what a ZK rollup is, basically it's a layer for computing lots of transactions that you can bundle down and send to an L1, like Ethereum. So it allows like much more scalability and many more transactions to be populated onto a base chain. And so with the innovation of like ZK rollups, we're now seeing a new sector kind of just starting to evolve called ZKML, which is zero knowledge machine learning. And what that looks like in practice is being able to compute machine learning algorithms and register their results on chain verifiably. So you can say, okay, I'm going to submit a image of my ID to a machine learning model, and I'm going to check whether like I'm 21 or over, and this machine learning model is going to spit out like yes or no, and you'd be able to put those results on chain. And yeah, it's a really interesting field. The current functionality of it is that we're only really able to get very small models on chain. So like very small 1 or 2 layer neural nets that can indicate whether like a drawing of the number 1 or the number 2 is like classify that number. So yeah, there's definitely a parallel that's starting to evolve, and it'll take time for ZKML to grow and to actually be usable for the masses. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how that field evolves and see if we can have like provable machine learning with private inputs and public outputs. Yeah, that's kind of one sector there. And yeah, that's probably what I've spent a lot of time exploring and talking to people about. But it's very niche field that's like only just now starting, really.
It's a very niche field, but from my anecdotal experience talking to people, Gio, it seems like it's only a matter of time before it starts to get really big, and you're at the forefront of it. You're just scratching the surface. So, hats off to you. Is there anything else, Gio, as far as the work that you're doing in the industry? I know you brushed on a lot of different topics, but is there anything else that you wanted to focus on as far as Starkware is concerned, as far as on-chain security with on-chain AI, and also your potential business development in blockchain infrastructure with ZK Sync?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to kind of talk about what the Duke Blockchain Lab is in conversations with Anchain. So Anchain AI is a on-chain security provider. So they use machine learning models to basically view on-chain data and actively determine like threats and such, and then also working with like big government industries to like audit on-chain activity. And we're talking with them to see if we can get our house course backed by Anchain and see whether or not Anchain is interested in providing their instructor course to students at the Duke Blockchain Lab and in the house course. So they provide like an auditing course. So if students want to become like a blockchain auditor, they provide a course for that. And we're talking with them about providing access to students for that. So yeah, that's kind of one initiative we're also rolling out at the Duke Blockchain Lab. But yeah, if you have any other questions about that, happy to continue talking.
Yeah, of course. I'm more curious, and again, thank you for explaining that. I think that was a sufficient answer, and I have a general idea of what direction you guys are going. But I would love to know more about the work and what you're building at Mural. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely happy to talk about that. So I've been working with Mural for almost a year now, maybe like 9-10 months. And at Mural, we're helping brands engage and create a touch point with their communities. So Web2 brands that are interested in creating like a go-to-market strategy for Web3 can use our software as a service platform to engage with their communities and bring on their communities from the Web2 ecosystem and engage them in Web3 via like NFT memberships. So basically allowing people to hold like memberships to a community through NFTs, and being able to use those memberships to have engagement with these brands. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways in which we work with different brands and different community members, but our software as a service platform is really built out behind the Gnosis multi-sig wallet. Gnosis is a company that builds basically multi-party computation on Ethereum and other EVM chains to allow people to access funds in a wallet through like a threshold. So, say 3 people can own a wallet, and then you only need 2 people to decide whether money gets sent from that wallet to another location. And basically, at Mural, we've locked in the Gnosis infrastructure, and these brands can manage their funds on chain through these wallets and allow community members to have access to those funds through proposals that can be approved or declined by members of the multisig, and then create other initiatives around non-fungible tokens as well. So we're working with a few brands right now, one of which is Superfest, and yeah, basically we're trying to build that engagement flywheel between brands and their community members.
How do you, or rather, if you were to approach a brand, how do you, what is the value prop that you guys lead with, and also what kind of brands are you typically reaching out to?
Yeah, great question. So typically we're reaching out to both brands that are somewhat Web3 native, or just pure Web2 brands. And what we'll kind of lead with is say like, hey, if you're looking to break into the Web3 space, and engage your community members more, then we have a solution that can provide you metrics on engagement and give your community members access to certain perks that your company wants to set in place. And we do that via gated membership through NFTs, so like Web3 memberships. And then that brand can then see how active their community is on proposing new initiatives for the brand to take, or new initiatives for community members to build out with the brand. So it's kind of engaging that community to be more ingrained in the brand itself, and to work directly with members of the brand on different initiatives. So that's kind of how we approach it. But
yeah, it makes perfect.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry, Sujay is in the audience, who's the other president of the Duke Blockchain Lab. So if you want to bring him up at some point, feel
free. Sujay, go ahead and request to speak, and then it'll push you to the top, and I can bring you up from there. And Gio, again, thank you for breaking it down for me several times. I wanted to just make the connections in my head. What is some pushback you get from brands? What are some reasons brands give you, say, hey, we don't want this?
Yeah, no, great question. So some of the pushback we get is like Web2 brands might feel that their communities might not be able to interface with Web3. So there's a lot of friction for new users to be able to, say, use MetaMask and be able to spin up a EOA account through MetaMask and interact with a decentralized application. And that's a big boundary, or a big barrier that we're seeing across the industry in decentralized applications, is a big friction point between Web3 protocols and being able to engage users. And one sector that I'm really excited about is account abstraction, and being able to, what that means is basically taking the concept of a wallet and abstracting that and making it as simple as Web 2 logins and Web 2 accounts. So what that looks like in practice is there's some companies out there that are building account abstraction wallets that use smart contracts to manage your account. So you can create different signature schemes that match with, say, Gmail, and be able to log into your wallet via Gmail and not have to worry about memorizing like a private key per se, and have kind of all that technical infrastructure owned by your hardware, and just being able to use this account through like traditional methods of access to the internet. So yeah, that's kind of one sector that we're exploring at Mural, is how do we, um, you know, reduce the friction even further for these Web2 brands and their community members.
I think every Web3 protocol should be exploring that. And one of the things I always say is the future of adoption for Web3 is when the everyday person is interfacing with it without recognizing that they are interfacing with it. An example, I mean, you just gave an example, but an example I give is interfacing with DeFi, entering a liquidity pool, for example, without actually having to go through all the steps, all the contract approvals, and the 16 steps or however many it takes to finally be an LP, or rather deposit an LP. So yeah, that I couldn't agree more with you on that note. Sujay, by the way, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I think I'm not sure if Gio went over the history of Blockchain Lab or where to sort of I could jump in, but yeah, I mean, thank you, I guess, for having me, and Gio for representing us so far. Would you like me to go over the, I guess, history?
Yeah, so Gio's done an excellent job of covering everything so far. Hats off to you, Gio. And CJ, if you wanted to pop in and jump in and kind of go, give us a quick background. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Blockchain Lab at Duke was started in 2017 by an undergrad named Melissa Zhang, and she actually ended up being one of the earliest employees at Coinbase. Now she's doing her own thing, trying to bridge the creator economy at her own startup called Bonfire. And we've sort of been through a lot of different presidents who have gone on to work for different DeFi protocols such as Ondo Finance, Consensus, and pursue other things. And we've had a lot of great speaker events. We even had at one point Fred Ursum from Paradigm and Coinbase come back and talk to a few of us, which was very inspiring. And I think mainly our focus is to take into anyone who is either whether they're a Web3 degen extraordinarily technically involved, or don't even know what the concept of blockchain is, and take them in and provide for them sort of mentorship guidance as well as weekly meetings to sort of increase their involvement and engagement in the space. And how that's happened is we offer a house course every year, which is called at Duke, known as like an intro to Solidity course, where we take these Web 2 developers, these normal CS kids, and sort of have web like developers such as Geo, who taught this course this last year, how to sort of use your original coding knowledge and expand that into becoming a developer, a blockchain developer. We also had a intro to DeFi course, which I sort of took the wing under, which is more so for people who have very little technical background but want to kind of understand what's the gateway between modern society and some of these applications they hear on the news. So I think going forward, we have a lot of exciting stuff coming up, some of which I think me and Gio have already talked about, but we can't really say for now. But in the coming months, I think Duke Blockchain Lab and our community is only going to grow.
Right on, CJ. Thanks for sharing, man. And I guess I'll ask the same question to you that I asked you earlier. It's great that you guys have designed a course and you're helping Web 2 developers with that transition to Web 3. You guys have a newsletter, which is awesome. What are some ways that you guys are boots on the ground, walking across campus, or basically getting your fellow students more acquainted with Web3 by explaining things in layman's terms?
Yeah, I think this is kind of my bread and butter because I think across campus, everyone maybe Geo is a little bit quieter, but I'm a very loud person. I'm involved also in our students, the largest undergrad organization we have by members called like Duke Investment Club. And I lead some of the content for those meetings. So at the beginning of the semester this past year, for example, I brought in the professor at TA4, Professor Campbell Harvey. He teaches a Fuqua course and sort of brought into some of the exciting stuff that's happening and in the space and creating presentations that are distributed to other people that otherwise would normally never be exposed to the space. In particular, investment club, a lot of kids that we've seen who would have never sort of thought about looking into a career in Web3 or DeFi are starting to come ask me now and come up after those presentations like, hey, can we get lunch? Hey, can we talk more? I'm like, absolutely, just come to our blockchain lab meetings. Here are the day, Tuesday at 7 p.m. This is the room. And afterwards, I'll sit and talk and give all my time I can, sort of. And so will Geo, if you know Geo, his schedule is always packed. This kid barely sleeps. But he and me and him, the one thing I think we get along with and we always will do is make time for people willing to learn. I think that's something that both of us have been through where we've had mentors guiding us through this space and we always provide open arms. I remember like this past, last week, I quite literally, one kid wanted to learn and he pulled me aside from an investment club exec meeting and I just talked to him outside, even though I was probably supposed to be doing something important for the club. But for me, it's more so if I can tell somebody has the passion or willingness to learn, I will, kind of drop everything and help them if I can. And Geo definitely shares the same sentiment, I feel like.
Yeah, I could certainly agree with you on Geo sharing that sentiment just based on my conversations with them. And I can certainly agree with you that, or rather, I can echo how important it is for someone to be boots on the ground on campus, trying to explain things in layman's terms and trying to get people to understand this stuff, at least to a point where they want to get involved. I think that oftentimes, especially for people in the industry, talk gets a little too technical, and that will divert people from wanting to participate because they don't get it. They might feel stupid. They're like, "Hey, I don't understand. I don't want anything to do with this," or they just might go by what they hear on the news. So I think it's really important, especially when you're spearheading this stuff at a grassroots level, to be able to convey it in simple terms. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to ask about what you guys have going on with respect to the Duke Blockchain Lab and the greater Duke campus. Is there anything that I might have missed or anything else that you guys want to share with us that you're excited about?
Yeah, definitely. There's one thing that I'd like to touch on just a little bit more, is that there's amazing professors at Duke that have really guided my experience in blockchain and have really been so giving when it comes to their time to help me kind of learn about different topics that I'm interested in within blockchain. And so, like CJ said, we have Cam Harvey, who is our faculty advisor for the Duke Blockchain Lab. He created the inverted yield curve, which is basically probably like the number one recession indicator. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but he's an economist that is really interested in DeFi, and he wrote a book on DeFi, and he's been amazing helping the blockchain lab grow and expand. And then we have professors like Andreas Frund, who works in pretty much every technical component of blockchain. So he's like very deep in the ZK space and also the account abstraction space to the product side of blockchain. And he also teaches a course that I'm currently enrolled in called Advanced Blockchain in the graduate school. And also Professor Jimmy Lenz, who has worked at Wells Fargo and traditional finance and is now verging into Web3 and works as an advisor on a bunch of different projects. So yeah, and also as well Sultan Medji, who has worked in crypto and is now like building a venture capital firm to invest in different projects. And I like one thing that I recommend to any students out there that are listening is if you're at a university or a school with like people involved in industry and crypto, and make sure to reach out to them. They have really amazing points of view, and they've been in the space. Some of them have been in the space for a while, and they can provide a lot of great insight. Or if you just want to reach out directly to people you find interesting that are working at universities, that's a great path for exploration in the blockchain space as well. But yeah, that's kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on in terms of Duke and blockchain. But happy to go into anything else that you might have.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely move on to kind of a more personal Q&A session, and this is directed at both of you. But before we do that, just to piggyback off of what Gio is saying, I'm a millennial, and none of this stuff was available at the university level when I was in college. And I think it's so cool that you guys have this infrastructure of not just a blockchain lab, a Duke blockchain lab, but professors that are helping you learn about this stuff, courses that you can take to learn about this stuff, accredited university courses. Um, and honestly, when I started in 2017, the only real resource was YouTube and the internet. So if you are still in the university and you want to learn about this stuff, there's no excuse. There's so many amazing tools apart outside of YouTube and outside of crypto Twitter, educational resources, accredited resources, and people like Gio and Sujay that are more than willing to come and help you. And I'm not saying you have to do it at the university level, but I'm saying that there are those resources available in case you do want to jump in and want to change trajectory of your career path, because it's something that I would have 100% been involved in had I had the opportunity when I was in college. Ladislav has a question. Ladislav, you have your hand up, sir. Go for it.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Noah. Gio, thanks, everyone for coming. I had a quick question actually on your opening monologue. What caught me, what I found very interesting was, the idea obviously that you were in sciences and you started to code for one of your programs and fell in love. You did mention that you worked with a company in LA and you were working with ETH contracts and smart contracts, and you brought in about 2 million of value, you said. And I was curious to know, what kind of value and how was that quantified? Was it through a tokenization of an ETH contract or a smart contract? If you can provide some insight on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Totally. So basically, I was kind of in charge of running all the tech operations. And we were launching various protocols and decentralized applications, some of which were NFT projects, others were like Web3 projects, and basically it was a lot of contract-based work, but some of it was like joint work between different organizations. And so like one example that I talked about before is that we created like, I think it was $420,000, raised $420,000 for children with cancer at St. Jude's, which was donated directly to St. Jude's, in tandem with Inspiration 4 from SpaceX, and as well as a couple other companies, Origin Protocol being one. And then we also launched we launched projects for artists as well. So Grammy nominated composer BT, we helped him do engineering for his metaversal drop, which was basically a NFT drop where we were pretty much dealing with one of the first iframe based NFTs that it was definitely like the most complex iframe based NFT at the time, which had like unlockable NFTs within the NFT. So you could sequence his album like basically he launched an NFT, and in that NFT it was basically interactable. So you could click around and it would produce music, and the music it produced were his songs for his album. So you could select the songs you wanted to listen to. And then if you sequence the songs in the right way, you could unlock hidden NFTs within the NFT. So I did a bunch of engineering work on the smart contract side and the Web3 side there. And
yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Did you, so, is the courses that you're learning and teaching and working on, do they work on learning these types of contracts? Because the idea to create such an interactive smart contract, obviously for something like the music industry, is, I mean, it's incredible. Like you said, you want to build on top of each other, and what you're saying is what you're doing. Now, if people are getting inspired by the words that you're saying, are these the types of classes and things we can expect to learn?
Yeah, no, great question. So I guess let me answer that in a few ways. So first, I when I was building this, there were not nearly as many accessible resources as there are today when it comes to engineering. And like I've definitely taken that with me. And like with the house course that I taught, I made sure to encompass kind of NFT creation, what it means to build interactive components with NFTs, trying to teach students kind of the rungs of solidity to create these NFT contracts or token contracts, and how to layer on different modular components that create more interesting experiences than traditional tokens that we see go out today. So yeah, that's kind of what I brought into the house course that I taught. In terms of these university level courses, I think they focus less on actually, no, a lot of them do focus on what it means to build a product in the blockchain application space. And so, like, one of the fintech graduate courses I took last semester, actually, we basically had to create a blockchain project that and pitch it to the class as like a end of year type of thing. And it got graded by people in industry, so people who had worked at Consensus Mesh and various blockchain companies. And basically, we were looking at like how do you leverage tokens and create a more valuable system for any industry that uses blockchain tokens. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, like definitely there, like I tried to when I taught my course, bring in these components from what I've learned to Duke and to the students. And then when I take these like graduate courses from these great professors, they're really interested in like looking at the quantitative findings in the industry and how to build and grow and expand the ecosystem. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Those types of things are certainly very exciting to me, and I could see other people also following suit. Given the fact that there are so many different NFT projects out there, how are you going to separate them? And by building on top of each other and creating these layers of engagement, I think it's a great way to not only learn how to build something, but to also enjoy the end product more. Rather than it just being a simple picture or whatnot. But that certainly answered my questions. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gios. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, no worries at all. And Noah, if you have any other questions, happy to.
Yeah, will do. So these are a bit more personal, and audience members should not take them as financial advice, but kind of something fun I like to do towards the end of the space. Gio, in this bear market, what projects are you bullish on, and what are you accumulating?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, again, this is not financial advice at all. I think so. For me, I serve as an advisor for a company called CGU, and basically we make small investments in various startups. And kind of what I'm really excited about is less so like I don't do a lot of token investing, but I'm very deep and knowledgeable into the like infrastructure spaces. So I'm really excited about companies that are building infrastructure to onboard the next billion users through account abstraction, or companies that are building ZK tech to enable new interesting use cases of blockchain with the scalability increase that we've seen from Snarks and Starks and other various infrastructure products that are allowing developers to build on top of blockchain and making blockchain development an easier and more frictionless thing than it was like a year ago. So yeah, I think that's what I'm really interested in and excited in, and kind of what I advise a little on the investing side. But again, this is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor at all.
Sujay, I would direct the same question as at you.
Once again, I have to reiterate on not financial advice here, but honestly, the way I view the space, I think I've been a hodler for a while in terms of one asset, which is Ethereum. I've, dollar cost average. Just generally, my thesis here is very simple. How I view, I guess, crypto, blockchain, Web3, whatever you want to call this entire, term of technology, this new depth. I think truly the solution to scalability, but also where I see a lot of developer activity, and when I have conversations with developers where they're passionate about, the conversation's always started about Ethereum. So really, my investing viewpoint when I'm looking at tokens is if there are devs, where are they focused? And Ethereum, even through bear markets, and incredible products are built on top of it. It just makes a lot of sense. And for me, I'm also very young, and I understand this concept of, I guess, asymmetric risk. Really, if it goes to, God forbid, Ethereum goes to zero, I'll still be okay at the end of the day. However, knowing what I know now and how much I spend my time in the space, if I didn't, DCA into Ethereum on a weekly basis, I would feel somewhat like there's a part of me that's missing. So I'm very much a convicted investor. But in terms of more specialized, I'm looking at liquid staking tokens. I follow one of our Duke alumni actually, who was kind of not involved in crypto a while ago. His name's Hal Press. He runs a Twitter page, also not financial advice, called North Rock Digital. And he, was in traditional finance, worked at Morgan Stanley, then at this hedge fund called Maverick Capital. And he writes a lot of theses about where he sees the space going. And I think I kind of share a lot of the same vision he does about liquid staking tokens, especially LDL, Lido. Without summing up, I just think that based off, I guess, the fundamental supply and demand shift and structure, I think there's very favorable, I guess, demand for these tokens. So I have initiated a small position in them, and I've held on to it for quite a bit, and it's appreciated nicely. So I'm not sure if I'm going to continue accumulating, but the one asset I know for a fact is Ethereum. But like I said, not financial advice.
Yeah, and I will second that. That is, again, not financial advice, but pretty much the one asset that I do hold and hold actively is Ethereum. And despite, the bear market and everything, I personally believe heavily in the tech that it's supplying and the network that Ethereum has created. And yeah, that's kind of why I'm so excited about Ethereum.
Yeah, another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is the bootstrapping and token network effect that Ethereum was really, besides Bitcoin, I think Ethereum was the next big one, where look at how much money it took to create the network effect that Google had with the hundreds of millions of dollars raised. I believe if you look at the Paradigm white paper, they have a section on crypto and token networks. Ethereum, even their initial token sale launch, I think it was less than $20 million. I believe it's 17 million. You don't have to quote me on that, but the power, I guess, of the crypto and token network effects that Ethereum has been able to captivate, and this, with their developer community and, consistently creating upgrade networks and proposals that will sustain the network for the long term and align the, individual users' incentives with the whole network's incentives per se is, something I look for. And I think Ethereum encapsulates that, especially with, how they, do those proposals.
Well, I will third that sentiment, and Sujay and Gio did a much better job of explaining it than I might have. So I'll leave it at that and follow up with another question. This is a two-part question, especially since you guys are both super bullish on Ethereum. What are your thoughts on OG Bitcoin and the direction it's heading in? And do you ever believe, or do you think that Ethereum will ever flip Bitcoin's market cap?
Yeah, I'll start here and then CJ, you can go for it. But yeah, I think Bitcoin obviously was the first working, like fully functioning distributed decentralized currency. And for that reason, it's managed to bootstrap a very strong network. And networks are very, very powerful. And it's definitely hard. And that is reflected in the price point of Bitcoin, in my opinion. Like I've definitely learned that I am not the best when it comes to creating predictions or like finding, like determining how assets flow in terms of financials. But in my opinion, what I do know is like the tech side, and I do know that you know Ethereum provides a incredible technology layer that has created innovation like pretty much no other um, like asset or space sector has created before. And the innovation on Ethereum and the people that are building on Ethereum are really knowledgeable and very active. And I do love the Ethereum community, and I think that the Ethereum community is really strong. And yeah, I'm not so like deep into the Bitcoin community, but I have no like anger or resentment towards anyone in the Bitcoin community. I think you know blockchain decentralized systems is like a big industry, and it's really exciting. And I've heard of companies that are looking to create application layers on Bitcoin, and I think that's exciting too. But yeah, for me, Ethereum is the most exciting because of all the technical applications it has.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on Geo, nothing against the Bitcoin community or Bitcoin maxis if you're out there. But me personally, I think the flippening, this concept is logically for me in terms of the technological opportunities and kind of what Geo was saying, what the community and what you could build on top of it, Ethereum provides much more. However, the traditional view and sort of how I see a lot of institutions that were originally buying up these assets, Bitcoin was the one crypto you saw every time on CNBC, right? Bitcoin was the one that was often, it was the first, which is it has that advantage. However, I'm not sure what the sustainability of the network is when we get to 2140. My viewpoint is, how is this crypto going to sustain over the long run? And will Ethereum overtake it? This is something I've been thinking about deeply. And if it's going to happen, I think it would happen during this next bull run, which whenever it happens. My thesis here is that Ethereum will lead the next bull run, and it won't be Bitcoin. And if that's how it plays out, I think we have a decent chance that Ethereum actually flips the market cap of Bitcoin. However, if it doesn't happen now, when I think we're going to see this new bull run, this Cambrian explosion of new innovation and new products that people can actually use, then maybe the traditional world and Bitcoin will sort of win, and that will be forever, in my viewpoint, the crypto with the highest market cap. Or that could change too, though, because honestly, the space is still relatively young. We know out of the dot-com crash, only a few tech companies survived, but the ones that survived, thrived. But the key thing here is which ones are going to, actually take charge and lead and be sustainable for the next, what I'm trying to think, 10, 20, 50, 100 years. If I had to do that, I'd bet on Ethereum over Bitcoin.
So, Sujay, Geo, on that note, excuse me, on that note, when do you guys predict we'll start to see a thawing? And disregard this most recent rally, but when do you think we'll start to see a thawing of this cold crypto winter, and when do you think we will potentially see a reversal in the next bull market, especially considering the fact that regardless of what you think about Web3, the conditions, it's just different this time. What's being built is different. How much the space is mature is different. Even this latest bull run was longer than previous bull runs. So would love to hear you guys' thoughts on that, and also how long you think the next bull run will last.
Yeah, I'll let Sujay talk about like market prices per se and timing. But from my standpoint, I I think that the innovations that have been built during this bear cycle and the products that are coming to market and starting to take a really big market share in the Ethereum ecosystem, in the rollup ecosystem, are really really exciting, and I think they have been growing despite the bear market. And I actually feel that the bear market has been really good for the space as a whole because it's flushed out a lot of projects and companies that um, were not building for the right reasons and not taking decentralization and blockchain tech as like a first priority. And in that sense, is like we've seen a lot of infrastructure companies grow despite the bear run. And yeah, I'm excited to see how those companies grow even more with an influx in capital when we do hit a bull run. But yeah, that is kind of what I think. I don't. I'm not. I'm terrible at timing markets, so I don't know when a flip will happen. But yeah, I'm excited to keep up with the innovation in the space and keep learning.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not going to try and predict timing and prices as well. I kind of give the general theme what I'm seeing. So when you go from a zero rate and interest rate environment where VCs have a lot of dry powder, they're almost willing to just throw money wherever they can in terms of when they hear the crypto Web3 blockchain projects, and so a lot of the times good projects, but unfortunately also a lot of times bad projects. That creates a somewhat interesting environment where people are building all these applications and things and saying they're starting these companies, but the real question is, are they actually useful and will people use them, right? And what we're seeing now, I think we still have some ways to go in terms of companies being wiped out. This the terrible term known as leverage is still really shaking up crypto. I think we saw in '08 how terrible and impactful leverage can be in the traditional financial markets, but now we're sort of seeing it play out with the leverage used in a lot of main crypto exchanges, hedge funds and other entities that invest. So really, I think we're still going to need some time. But what you will notice now is I know the companies that are building good projects with a good team. And I'm not trying to shamelessly plug the one I work for part time Harpy, but really just the ones that have a solid, large total addressable market that are building stuff, crypto safety, firewall prevention. I'm really looking into the uses of how do we make sure when we onboard the next billion users that they know what they're doing and they're safe and they don't get phished, right? So that's a theme I've been thinking about. But also, what are some useful applications that could come out of this space? So I think what we're going to need to see is, along with the right projects coming out with the right teams and not VCs funding everything, but really good project and good teams building some stuff that's actually useful. We're also going to need macroeconomic conditions to play out a little bit more favorable than they are now. Because when you have such a high interest rate environment, it's really hard to, come up with new ideas, innovate, and create when it's really hard to get capital. So if you are a really good builder, you might actually, in a good way, come up with a creative solution and bootstrap your own sort of startup without requesting that funding, where we used to see everyone was just trying to raise another round, another round, another round to keep it going, to have that big headline like we raised at $1 billion valuation. When really, what I really enjoyed back when NFTs came out of like the 2017 bear market, right? These products and useful innovations and ideas that come from environments where liquidity and cash is hard to come by, requires more creativity. And I think in the next, 1 or 2 years, we're going to see even the stuff that Geo works on and is excited about, right? Account abstraction. Hopefully, more and more of those types of ideas, that creativity comes through, and we see innovation come and sort of get more and more people excited about the space. Because that, honestly, I think that's what brings out people from the bear to the bull, the excitement and anticipation for the technology and what actually holds, and not the prices. The prices will come after the excitement. However, the initial, launch of from we're currently in, besides a short rally of fear to excitement is what we really need. And that's a combination of a few things besides just, building and macro.
Right on, CJ. Beautifully put and broken down. Guys, a few more questions from me before we wrap things up. What are your thoughts on Binance and BNB? Right, Binance is a juggernaut in the industry, and they just CZ just seems to be built different, and they don't seem like they're slowing down anytime soon. So, do you guys think that centralized entities like Binance will continue to play a role in this industry over the next 5 to 10 years, let's say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think centralized exchange, like 100% agree. CZ is an absolute tank of a CEO, and he has grown that company to insane amounts. And I think that centralized exchanges have done really well at onboarding a lot of users in crypto, and owning that touch point between users and like tokens and DeFi. Well, not DeFi, but more so like tokens, crypto, right? And I think that's good in some senses, but I do think that when centralized exchanges take on like the nature of centralization and they're not adhering to like the proper thesis of decentralization, I think there can be a lot of issues there, which we've seen with like FTX, for example. It's like I personally believe that the future of that crypto touch point is going to be more enabling users to have easy access to crypto, just as centralized exchanges do, but where they actually do own their own crypto, and it's not custodied. And that's part of the reason why I'm excited about account abstraction and those decentralized ownership protocols. So like I think centralized exchanges have played a role in onboarding a lot of users into crypto, but I hope and I am excited for the centralized exchanges that take on the right properties of decentralization and make sure that they are managing their risks really, really, really well if they're not. And if they're not managing their risks, that's exactly the kind of scenario you end up in with FTX, right? So yeah, I'm like a decentralization maxi. So I am excited for those products that do bring on easier to use flows and pipelines for decentralization, which is hard.
Yeah, I basically agree with everything Gio just said. When I think about the role of centralized exchanges, I think, how does my mom access crypto? Because right now, if I tried showing my mom what Uniswap is or how to do a transaction, I think she'd be somewhat confused about all these miscellaneous terms and, trying to enter a gas limit that's appropriate and actually have the transaction go through, because sometimes you're waiting there for 5 minutes and, there's definitely some, obstacles there, where I think the centralized exchange, the Coinbase interface is just really easy. It kind of gamifies the process of buying crypto. And I do think they play an important role of like that onboarding step. However, if we do have, better DeFi on ramps, making, Uniswap more accessible, or just broader education, then I could see a world where, all centralized entities like kind of don't exist. However, in reality, in the next like 50 years, maybe next 10 years, I still think centralized exchange would be an important component for that initial onboarding.
Gio, you've mentioned account abstraction a number of times, and obviously if you Google account abstraction, there are a number of different sources and a number of different ways you can learn about it. But would love to know, and YouTube as well, but love to know, what are your favorite pieces of literature that you think best explain from a high level and in layman's terms what account abstraction is and why it's so useful?
That's a good question. So I'd say that like a lot of my knowledge on account abstraction has come from diving into like the Ethereum improvement proposals, um, like diving into those, but they're technically heavy, and it can be difficult to kind of understand those. Um, I don't know. Maybe Sujay has encountered some AA resources that are easier to understand. I mean, some of the leaders in account abstraction on Twitter um, have helped me understand what account abstraction looks like. But I guess like as sort of a small general overview, it's account abstraction is the process of taking. So if you access like web applications or decentralized applications like Uniswap through MetaMask. MetaMask uses a private key that's stored in your hardware, and then it creates signatures off of that private key. And so basically, you own your private key, right? And you're supposed to keep track of it, write it down somewhere safe, and blah blah blah. But that process can be like keeping track of a private key that's long and random is difficult, and there's a way to get rid of that component where you have to memorize that, and that process is called account abstraction. And in account abstraction, instead of all your transactions originating from that private key, they originate from a smart contract wallet. And the way that's done is the smart contract wallet gets transactions sent to it through a private key that's stored in your hardware, but it's like almost a recoverable account. So, like if you use your traditional methods of authentication, like Gmail, you can recover your account. So these smart contracts can embed in um, different ways for account recovery, which is like really nice and is more of like a traditional flow that we've seen in Web 2. So that's kind of what account abstraction is. It's like the process of making access to crypto and DeFi easier, and it's done through smart contract wallets. And some good resources on this are the Ethereum improvement proposals, which I talk about in my Twitter. Um, but yeah, there's definitely resources out there, and definitely DM me if you'd like more explanation on any of that.
Yeah, I'd argue based on your explanation and just based on my kind of high level understanding, it's pretty critical for mass adoption. We talked earlier about why and Sujay just talked about why Coinbase is so easy or such a great way to lower barrier to entries, because you need to be able to interface with this stuff. The average person needs to be able to interface with this stuff without going through all the steps in the background. Guys, well, I guess one more question, and I have to hard stop here at 1:30. But one last question for Sujay, because I asked Gio this question earlier. Sujay, what are some aspirations that you have upon graduating? Do you want to work in the industry, and if so, what kind of work do you want to do in the industry?
I think I've tried developing and coding, and that's just not my thing. And really, my background has always been like stocks, traditional finance. This next summer, I'm working at an investment bank, but most likely focusing on working within a group that focuses on digital asset advisory, and helping clients in Web 2 and sort of thinking about like potential acquisitions, but also how they could best position themselves. I'm sort of whether they're IPOing as a company or, acquiring another one. But that's just an internship. More so long term, the real interest and passion I have, like ever since childhood, has been music. So really thinking about bridging, Web3 blockchain technology and the music industry, because I think artists Particularly, let's say streaming has been a good invention for giving artists exposure and letting the record labels and companies get money. However, artists oftentimes don't see the vast majority, if any, of the money they make from streaming. So figuring out ways where, artists could, potentially make a career and make money from it is something that's really interesting to me and intriguing. So ideally, finding work or creating a company or working for a company that is involved in the intersection of Web3 blockchain, and helping individual artists and music would be something that's really exciting and probably like a goal of mine as a career.
Yeah, Suche, I couldn't agree more. I've tried coding a couple times, and I just think that my brain. I feel like if I really buckled down and tried, I could do it. But I feel like my brain is just meant for kind of a broader range of different activities. So I can certainly relate to you there. And I couldn't agree more, guys. I actually forgot to ask about NFTs. I was going to ask you both. Actually, we have time. Because I'm glad CJ brought that up. I would love for you guys, and music's obviously one of them. I would love for you guys to tell me which industries, and Gio, I'm sure you could add insight to this with respect to medicine, but what industries do you see being disrupted the most by NFTs?
I think, what industries do I think would be disrupted the most by NFTs? I think like membership programs could be disrupted in a large sense by NFTs. So having NFTs be an interoperable membership, potentially between brands and within brands, as like a way to have a touch point that's tradable and authenticated by these brands that use NFTs. So that's something that like I'm working on at Mural. And then I also think that NFTs can serve a great purpose when it comes to identification. So being able to create, like, for example, soulbound NFTs that are some authentication token to a digital wallet, so a digital public address on Ethereum per se, that allow users to access different protocols, like lending protocols or DeFi protocols, and being able to be like KYC'd on chain. That's an interesting use case. Yeah, that's kind of some use cases I've thought about in NFTs. NFTs are interesting, and I think that their use cases will grow, and there will be exciting new ways that people haven't thought about to use like non-fungible tokens.
Yeah, I think for me, I obviously just recently mentioned music. Potentially just helping the individual artists like have more sources of revenue. But in terms of like the bigger picture, I think tokenization as a whole will be huge, particularly maybe thinking the real estate industry, right? Tokenizing a house. I have looked at real estate properties before. I'm in a real estate class now. Essentially, the process for transferring title ownership, um, even just like going between different parties, negotiation, a lot of it could be simplified if it's, put on a blockchain. And, what if the deed or title of a house is an NFT, right? And if you think about the underlying incentives to who this would benefit down the line, if I'm the guy that designed the house, if I'm the constructor, what if I put a preset royalty like, hey, 1% every time this house is sold thereafter, I get 1% back. So I'm going to want to put this on chain. If I'm a homeowner, I'm probably going to eliminate a lot of the fees and, a lot of the time waiting and the friction and costs and the middlemen associated with transferring ownership or buying a house in general. So I want to get involved. So if you really think about projects and initiatives that take into account everyone else's underlying incentives and how they could benefit from it, that's going to create an ecosystem where people are want to get involved, want to get involved, and that's what I'm excited about. And I think real estate definitely has a potential, but even just broad, think about what asset can I tokenize that would eliminate a lot of the middlemen, create less friction, save everyone time and money, and craft it and create it in a smart way. But for me, the biggest answer, like right in front of my face, was real estate.
Yeah, and just to very quickly back that up, I think any way that people can leverage the fact that blockchain abstracts the trust layer, then you can build really good products on chain. So just like what CJ was saying, if you're able to abstract this trust layer um, through blockchain via NFTs that map to real estate, there's really interesting potential there. And I think that's a lot what blockchain was set up to do, is to create like um, decentralized trust and not have to build up a massive trust through an organization. Yeah, that's it. And thank you, Noah.
Yeah, Gio, Sujay, thank you guys so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Duke Blockchain Lab, and loved your insights on pretty much everything. I agree with almost everything that you guys have said. And thank you so much for sharing with us all the great things happening at Duke. I think it's amazing how much the university, how much, how many, I think it's amazing how much blockchain and Web3 interest have grown on the university level, not just with respect to students, but professors as well. So, a lot of great resources over there at the Duke Blockchain Lab. And you have folks like Gio and Sujay that are more than willing to, again, as I mentioned earlier, help you learn about this stuff. And if you're a student, I don't think there's any excuse to not get involved if you are interested in Web3. So, if you have more questions about Duke Blockchain and the Duke Blockchain Lab and the conference, just shoot Gio or CJ a DM on Twitter. They're super responsive, very easy to work with. And to everyone else, I say, remember that what you hear on the Aquarium and Whalecoin Talk is meant for educational purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. So do your own research and be safe out there. My name is Noah, signing out. Take care.